Hey guys, it's Amanda from the Farmer's Daughter USA. I am here with Food Science Babe today. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. So you posted an article a couple days ago that I wanted to talk to you about because I thought it was really seriously ridiculous.
Yeah.
But can you first maybe give your background just so people watching kind of have an idea of your expertise?
Yeah. So my degree is in chemical engineering, and then I've worked for a little over 10 years, more as a food scientist in the food industry. So I started out at a large conventional ingredient company, and then I've also worked at some smaller, more like natural organic companies. So now I mostly like full-time take care of my daughter, and then just part-time I still work in the food industry as a consultant. So now I work with small startup food companies. So I do product development work, I create nutrition panels, kind of do that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, then you're uniquely qualified to talk about these kind of... So from reading the article, this is my understanding of what happened. Cameron Diaz and then this woman, Samantha Powers, who I'm not sure that I'm even familiar
Yeah,
with.
I don't know who she is either.
No. They were sitting back one night enjoying a glass of wine and, congratulating themselves on eating only organic and having the fanciest, skin products that they can have. And they supposedly realized, hey, maybe what we're drinking isn't okay because it's not like organic wine. I think Cameron Diaz said something like, if you're not drinking organic wine, you're drinking pesticides.
Yeah.
So on the farm side, obviously, organic farmers also use pesticides.
Right.
What about this idea that she's just downing pesticides because she's drinking conventional wine?
I just think it's so hilarious because like the whole premise is like, oh my gosh, we had no idea that our wine was unhealthy. And it's like, okay, first of all, like it's alcohol, like it's not necessarily healthy, like no matter if it's organic or conventional. So it's just kind of funny, like the whole thing is just kind of hilarious to me because it's like, oh my gosh, we had no idea what was in our wine. It's like alcohol. I mean, I don't know, like what do you think? So I mean, I get like, yes, additives can be added, but like when you're talking about, I mean, you're talking about alcohol, so like obviously the most toxic thing in wine is alcohol. So like if you're adding some things to it, like I get people might not like that because it's not like pure and like whatever, that's fine if you're a wine connoisseur and you don't like added sugars or added colors, like totally get that. But when you get into like saying like, oh, that makes it unsafe or that makes it unhealthy, it's like, okay, like wine isn't like a health food to begin with, so it's not making it more unhealthy to like have some parts per billion levels of like pesticide residues or some additives. So it's just kind of funny to me because it's like, even if there were, even if it were to get tested and there's like parts per billion of pesticide residue, it's like, okay, parts per billion of something that's like even less toxic than the alcohol that you're drinking at like millions of times more than that. Like it just makes no sense. So it's just kind of, it's hilarious to like read that and it's like, oh my gosh, like we made this wine so healthy, and it's like, it's wine.
Still
Like,
wine, right? It's not...
Yeah.
So you mentioned some of the preservatives and the coloring and maybe the extra sugars and that kind of stuff. And you're a food scientist, so like those things are safe, right? We're not...
Yeah, I mean
that's harmful.
yeah, I mean, again, like the thing that's going to be the most harmful in wine is the actual alcohol. So like, these like added things, it's like that, sure, if you don't want that for whatever reason, you don't like the taste, you just don't want it added, like that's fine, but like don't pretend it's like making it unsafe or like unhealthy, because it's like it's not. Like they're safe additives, they're safer than the alcohol that you're drinking. So it's just kind of crazy to me. And then like, yeah, the whole pesticide thing too. I mean, like organic uses pesticides, and I know a lot of the narrative around organic is like that they don't. And then even sometimes when you question, because I always look at these things on my Facebook feed, so I tend to get like a lot of ads for like natural, organic, like clean wines, and I'm like, why are these things popping up on here? But it's probably because I always comment. But I always ask, like I'm always like, okay, so, because they always like specifically say we don't use any synthetic pesticides. So I'm always like, okay, which natural ones are you using? And they just keep saying like, we don't use any pesticides. And like, I think a lot of them don't consider the natural ones to be pesticides. So they just say like, well, we don't use any. And it's like, well, you probably do, like, you know, so it's just like, they don't consider the natural ones to be pesticides, but they are using pesticides in most cases. So yeah.
And it's such a weird dichotomy that people make. Like,
yeah,
this counts, but this doesn't. But there's no, like, the difference is really
right. Yeah, and some of the ones used in organic farming, I mean, are way more toxic. And you know, it's like, it's just because they're natural doesn't mean that, you know, it's even safer or better anyways. So I mean, I'm sure, I mean, yeah, I don't know specifically like where they're getting their wine from, but I'm assuming that some of the using some sort of pesticide. So yeah.
And it was kind of funny because apparently Cameron Diaz now thinks that she's like an expert on soil health and like climate, all of this, and she's, you know, she's more uniquely qualified to grow grape wine now than
right
else.
Yeah, I think the other one, whatever her name is, she was like, oh, Cameron's like the soil expert. Like, I don't understand any of that stuff, but like, she's the expert. I'm like, yeah, no, she's not.
All because they took a trip to France and like drank a bunch of wine. So they're experts.
I know.
But I think this kind of brings up a larger point that we tend to get really bad information from celebrities. Yeah. Why do you think people tend to trust them so much with these kinds of things?
I just think people, I mean, I think they just like really want, you know, that lifestyle, and it's sort of like, oh my gosh, that's so glamorous. Like, just the whole clean eating, clean beauty, like all that stuff. It's like, it's just, I don't know. It's just, you know, it's like almost like a status symbol to like be eating clean and be having, you know, oh, all my beauty products are clean, and oh, now my wine is clean. I don't know. I just feel like it's one of those things where it's like, you just kind of like, it's like you just want to feel superior in some way, or like, I mean, a lot of times too, people do actually think it is better too. I mean, there is that. So, you know, a lot of people think that it is better for the environment, or they do think it's healthier. So, but, and yeah, obviously like their information is going to be more widespread than like something I post too. So it's like, I think it just gets out there more, and people idolize these people, and they're like, they don't necessarily like really, I guess, probably listen to, you know, scientists in normal life anyway. So it's just like, oh, I like this person. They seem like they know what they're talking about. So sure, I'm going to believe them. And I mean, like their posts just get spread so much farther than like anyone that's trying to communicate the actual science too. So yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to, you know, sort of debunk these things, because by the time you do, it's like they've gotten so far out of hand. It's just like, yeah, nobody cares, because it's not cool to like be talking out against these things that people think are making them superior. So
exactly. You know, I think there's probably also an element like these actresses are very pretty, and they, you know, have a nice figure and everything, and so you know, like, we want to emulate that and be
it's
them.
Like, oh, she totally looks that way because she's drinking healthy wine. I mean, of course.
Exactly. Where would you recommend if somebody sees a story about this kind of celebrity endorsed product, like where would you recommend people go to kind of fact check that and figure out if it's legitimate?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely, you know, just don't, if a celebrity is like making some sort of like science-based claim, and like there's literally no information other than like what they're stating, I mean, obviously that's a huge red flag. And I mean, just in general, if it's coming from a celebrity and you can't find any actual like science-based information that agrees with it, that's, yeah, I mean, you can always, I try to stay on top of it, you know, on my page. And like a lot of people, when these things get kind of big, I mean, that was something that a follower sent me. So if I have people send me something like multiple times, I'll be like, okay, I need to debunk this. So Yeah, I think just making sure you're following like science-based pages, and then when you see something like that, just like double check it. I mean, there's typically somebody out there that's eventually debunking these kind of things. So, hey, is this true? I try to respond, or I try to publicly like debunk it too. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think there's a loose community at least of science-based pages. So if somebody sends it to one of us and we don't know, like we can share it and figure it out. So
yeah, definitely. And just not to be like, sharing things too. Like if you see something and you're not really sure, don't just like share it without knowing, because then it just like, that's what happens. Like everyone just keeps sharing it, and they're like, and then it just gets so out of hand, and it's like, this literally isn't based on anything except for a celebrity's quote, it's like, it's just kind of ridiculous. So yeah, I think just like helping to not share it too. Like even if you might sort of believe it, like just don't share it if you're not sure.
Right. Take a minute to verify before putting it out. Yeah.
Right.
So talking about like the clean eating and everything, and I feel like that really just kind of perpetrates this food shaming that we have. And it's one thing if you can afford to go buy all organic and feel great about yourself, but for people who can't do that, I'm always worried that these kind of messages are going to have some kind of negative impact on them. And how they're perceiving food.
Oh, for sure. And like it does. I mean, there have been like surveys and studies done showing that like specifically, stuff like the Dirty Dozen, it causes consumers that, they go to the store and either they don't have access to organic, like financially, or like just they don't have it in their store, or it's there and it's way more expensive, and then they end up just buying less produce overall because they're afraid of conventional. And so like it is detrimental to, people that are afraid of conventional. I mean, I've even heard some people saying they work at food banks and the people will come in, and if it's not organic, like they won't even accept it. And just because they're so afraid of like all of the misinformation, like they literally think that it's like worse to be eating fresh fruits and vegetables that are conventional just because of all of this misinformation. So I think that kind of gets confused a lot on my page too. Like people kind of are like, well, why are you against organic? It's like, I'm not like specifically against anything really. It's just, if you eat organic and you like it, like that's perfectly fine. It's when you start making claims about the alternative is poisoning you and all that kind of messaging is so harmful, because just like I said, it's like it causes people to eat less of, healthy fruits and vegetables. And so it is really, that shaming, it really affects people, especially like, moms of young children. And they're like, oh my gosh, am I poisoning my kid? Like, I'm going to buy organic, and then I'm going to make sure they get enough fruits and vegetables, but they themselves don't eat enough, because they're buying all the organic stuff for their kids. And so it is really, it's sad because, first of all, it's not true. And second of all, it's like people are like afraid of these things that they should be eating more of. So, and even like the shaming around, canned and frozen. And it's like, if I personally buy a lot of frozen just because whenever I buy fresh, a lot of it goes bad before I can eat it. So just things like that. And then people, I know if I would buy all fresh, I would be eating so much less of it, because I'm not wanting to go to the store as much right now and everything like that. So like, yeah, all that misinformation, it's not just like, it is harmful, so if you do eat that way, like that's perfectly fine. But like just the term clean, like clean means nothing when it comes to, unless you're like literally talking about dirt. I mean, like clean, it means nothing when it comes to like beauty products, food products. Like these things aren't clean or dirty. Like that whole thing, like it's just so, it literally means nothing. Like there's no definition for it. Like
there's no regulation or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it automatically stigmatizes the other stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So it kind of, and to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, like it almost seems like we're having, where people are concerned about food waste, but then when we're talking about frozen versus canned versus fresh, that frozen those frozen vegetables are really important. I mean, up here in northern Indiana, we don't have access to fresh
Yeah.
produce all the time. So
Right.
that's really important
Right.
for people to skip that during the winter when you probably need that kind of stuff more.
Yeah.
That can be
And
really,
then especially like during, you know, a pandemic when it's like the best thing we can be doing is like not going to the store, you know, as much as we can. And so it's
right,
like to be scaring people over things that last longer. So then, you know, they're going to the store more often. It's just like it just makes sense right now. I mean, it's
right.
like, you know, the dirt amount this spring, and I was like, really? Like you're doing that now? Like this is it's just it's even more ridiculous now.
Right, right. Yeah. There's so much misinformation. And I think going back to our two celebrity wine experts now, the fact that they're even trying to tell people that you're drinking pesticides when you drink conventional wine is just, I mean, it's not true in any kind of meaningful sense. And so,
Right.
it's a bad messaging, and it's harmful to people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. I mean, it's like it just literally, yeah, it's just when you understand like the toxicity between like, and we're talking about like maybe parts per billion of like a pesticide residue, and then it's like millions of parts per billion of alcohol, like which is going to harm you first, you know? I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Right, right.
So yeah, it's just ridiculous.
All right. Well, I appreciate you jumping on and talking to me about this. I love following your stuff. I think you've got some really good content, and I encourage everybody to follow you and you know, try and
Yeah.
stay away from this negative messaging.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you, and I hope we'll talk soon.
Yeah,
We probably
thanks.
have many other celebrity things to talk about.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.